Chapter 4. The Practice of Mental Quiet. The sovereignty of nature has been allotted to the silent forces. The moon makes not the faintest echo of a noise, yet it draws millions of tons of tidal waters to and fro at its bidding. We do not hear the sun rise nor the planets set. So too, the dawning of the greatest moment in a man's life comes quietly, with none to herald it but the world. In that stillness alone is born the knowledge of an over-self. The gliding of the mind's boat into the lagoon of the spirit is the greatest thing I know. It is more hushed than the fall of eventide. Only in a deep silence may we hear the voice of the soul. Argument but beclouds it, and too much speech stops its appearance. When you have caught your fish, you may share it. But while you are angling for it, talk breaks the spell and frightens the fish away. If we could occupy ourselves less with the activities of the larynx and more with the activities of the deeper mind, we might arrive at something worth saying. Speech is an adjunct, not an obligation. To be is the prime duty of man. Life teaches us silently, while men utter their instructions in loud voices. The treasure trove of the real self is within us, but it can be lifted only when the mind is still. Words hint at this reality, but they cannot explain it. Truth is a state of being, not a set of words. The cleverest argument is no substitute for personal realization. We must experiment if we are to experience. The word God is meaningless to me unless I can contact the absolute within myself. Then only can I place it in my vocabulary. A little practice goes a long way. A score of lectures will not make plain to the skeptical senses. 100 books cannot reveal to the inner sight what is discovered by those who faithfully and resolutely attempt the method outlined in these pages. The so-called scientific and philosophic proofs of the spiritual reality prove nothing at all. The German philosopher Kant showed long ago that the reason cannot grasp this reality. Hence, all our proofs are mere piling up of words. It is equally as easy to disprove this reality on the strength of another set of evidences, or by the force of an opposing group of arguments, as it is to prove it. Something of a thrill passed through the learned world when Einstein announced his discovery of the curvature of a ray of light passing near the sun. This observation was to establish his theory of relativity, but at the time we all thought it might lead to much more than that. We thought that with a little more research along the same lines and a little more speculation about the results of that research, the existence of God might be brought within a range of scientific proof. Alas, that eager anticipation, which filled so many minds and touched so many pious hearts, has receded somewhat during the years. Science can still deliver no certain verdict on this question. The greatest problem of individual existence, the supreme questions which haunt the life of every earnest man, cannot be solved within the few inches which confine the human brain. But satisfying answers for them are waiting for us in the limitless interior of our being, in the divine substance of our hidden nature. For the brain can answer only with barren words, whereas the spirit answers with the ravishing experience of internal illumination. Whoever will earnestly put into regular practice the mystical concentration explained in this book will receive increasing confirmation of the truth of man's divinity by his own first-hand experience. Books and Bibles will begin to lose their authority as he begins to find his own. God is his own best interpreter. Find the God in your heart and you will understand by direct intuition what all the great teachers, real mystics, true philosophers, and inspired men have been trying to tell you by the torturous method of using words. You cannot show my intellect that God, the Absolute, the Spirit, call it as you please, exists. But you can show this to me by changing my consciousness until it can participate in the consciousness of the God within me. There is one way only to effect this change and at the same time discover who we really are. That way is to pass from the outer to the inner, from being busy with a multitude of external activities to being busy with a single internal activity of the mind. Saint Augustine soliloquies this: I, Lord, went wandering like a strayed sheep, seeking thee with anxious reasoning without, whilst thou wast within me. I went round the streets and squares of the city of this world seeking thee, and found thee not, because in vain I sought without for him who was within myself. We must throw the plummet of mind into the depths of self. The deeper it falls, the richer will be the treasure we shall recover from that calm Sagosan sea. Consciousness must be pivoted at the inmost point of one's being. Each man has a private door opening onto the eternal brightness. If he will not press and push it open, his darkness is self-doomed. If you want proof of your divinity, listen to your overself, for that proof is within you. Take a little time out of your leisure to shut out the tumultuous distractions of the world and enter into a short seclusion. Then listen with patience and attention to the reports of your own mind in the manner which I shall shortly explain. Repeat this practice every day, and one day that proof will suddenly visit your solitude. And with it will come a glorious freedom when the burdens of man-made theologies or man-made skepticisms will go out from you. Learn to touch your overself, and you will never again be drawn into those futile circles where men raise the dust of theological arguments or make the noise of intellectual debate. In this way, you will finally settle the question for yourself, independently of what any book may say about it, no matter how sacred or secular it be. Some people call this meditation, and indeed the word is as good as any, except that I propose to describe this method of meditation, which differs in its basic principle from most of the methods which have been reported to me, and which might be more appropriately called mental quiet. The only way to understand the meaning of meditation is to practice it. 4,000 volumes of metaphysics will not teach us what the soul is, exclaimed Voltaire. Like most things that are worthwhile, the results of meditation are not arrived at except with labor and difficulty. But those who practice aright, they shall surely be reached. We begin by fitful experiment, and we end by divine experience. We play with meditation and try to contemplate, but a dawn will one day arise when our minds shall steep themselves in the endless beatitude of the Overself. Meditation is almost a lost art in the West. Few practice it, and even among these fewer still understand what they are doing. The habit of setting aside a little time each day for daily meditation or daily quietening of the mind is today noticeably conspicuous by its absence from the life of Western peoples. The hypnotic power of external existence clings to our minds as a leech clings to human flesh. The unwilling conscious self will bring dozens of good excuses against starting this practice or against continuing it after it has been started. The personality finds it dull, empty, or too much of a strain. The initial battle of overcoming the brain's unwillingness to come to a rest is perhaps the hardest, but it must be fought. Yet it is a habit of vital importance whose benefit, when practiced, cannot be too highly exaggerated, but whose neglect leads to worry and woe. Beyond the commonplace trivialities of daily round, there is a finer and fairer existence. However much we may resist this diviner claim upon us during the day, we are unable to resist returning to the inner self during sleep, dreamless and deep. Then we are captured by the soul. Then we enjoy rest in our own nature, albeit unconsciously. It is an arresting thought, this, and a hint of high philosophic truth. But how can a people enslaved by the trials and tumults of material life become aware of this wonderful truth? Therefore it is that those who are wise take up the daily practice of calming the mind and withdrawing it into the deep abiding peace that lies hidden within us. General Gordon regularly set 1 hour aside every morning for his spiritual devotions. How much inspiration for his soldierly activities, how much strength and courage did he not draw from this wise practice? William T. Stead, famous newspaper editor and fighter for the outcast, once spent 3 months in prison because he dared to publish the truth. He declared in after years that these were the most profitable months of his life. It was the first time in my life that I had had any time to sit down and think, to sit down and find myself, he said afterwards. Thomas A. Edison, whose name will always be starred in the world's list of great inventors, developed through repeated habit the ability to relax in the midst of his work and throw himself into a meditative condition which brought him the solution of many of his complexing problems. He once said, "The hours which I have spent alone with Mr. Edison have brought me the real big returns in my life. To it I attribute all I have accomplished." We give no thought to the inner life. We try to persuade ourselves that we have not a half hour or to spend sitting in the quiet well of truth. A moment of mental quiet is looked upon as a moment wasted. Hence the masses are not wiser for their multitude of days. The modern world believes it has no use for such a thing as meditation, which too often is condemned as mere abstraction. And the modern world is not altogether wrong nor altogether right in its usual attitude. History shows how religion, to take one example, has produced a number of meditative visionaries who invited others to enter with them into the domain of sheer self-delusion and to wander into the realm of puerile fancies. It is such misguided persons who have been responsible for the common notion that spiritual seers are men who stand gazing into the heavens, exploring with their mental eyes dim cloudlands of no interest and of no use to sane mortals. They are the sham mystics who live in fantastic worlds of their own. What they need is a hard bump against reality. But history also tells us of a band of seers who take higher rank. They were men of spotless character and exceptional charity. Their commonplace characteristic was that they had passed through an experience which lit up their minds with untellable illumination and which bestowed ecstatic happiness. These were the true mystics, if you like. Their statements, which were phrased in all humility, revealed that they had penetrated to the inmost regions of man's heart. They had gone into that deeper place where the soul abides, and they had discovered at last the diviner nature of man, which remains untouched and unfallen through tenemented in frail flesh. It is not my purpose to list their names, but the books of Evelyn Underhill and Dean Inge give a good idea of the most important ones within the Christian fold. The world's mind is too apt to become hypnotized by its material environment. For many persons, the spiritual life has become a mere myth. It is a strange and sad thing that while our leading scientists and finest intellects are returning towards a more spiritual interpretation of the universe and of life, the masses have sunk deeper into the gross materialism which the first fumbling researchers of science appear to justify. So we ought to be somewhat grateful to those seers who ventured into untrodden fields to bring back report of the diviner life which is possible to man. True vision is a tremendous experience, not a set of theories. No man who has lived through even a temporary spiritual experience is ever likely to forget it. His days will be haunted until he sets out to seek ways and means of repeating it. I have no complicated system to formulate in these pages. I propose only to teach a simple technique for becoming aware of the highest in ourselves. No method of meditation can be easy in itself, because the practice connotes thought control, than which few things are harder in this world. Yet a method of meditation can, however, be simple. It need not be complicated by torturous paraphernalia, nor tied up with mind-beclouding jargon. Various systems of meditation had been taught. Different paths of yoga have been chalked out in both ancient and modern times. The technique for attaining self-knowledge, which is propounded here, however, cannot be brought easily into any of these existing classifications. This art of interrogative self-reflection stands alone in its simplicity, uniqueness, originality, and power, although it naturally has several points of contact with other systems. I do not claim that it offers a quicker and safer means of attaining spiritual self-knowledge than most of the paths I know. The various branches of yoga, that profound but complicated Indian way, are excellent when considered in relation to the people and epoch to whom they were given. But when considered in relation to the Western races and modern needs, they obviously prove too impractical, except for a few. This inquiry into the true self is the simplest system of meditation I know, and therefore the most suited to the busy man of the present age. It is quicker to grasp and simpler to practice than the complicated yoga systems of the East. It may advantageously be practiced by anyone who cares to ascertain the truth about his own nature. When you have awakened in the morning and bathed, the first duty, and usually the most neglected one, confronting you is to plug in to your true self. Yet most people make it their first duty to think of their present troubles, the work in hand, or the persons they are soon to meet. Their activities and their problems are first in their thoughts, instead of obtaining that wisdom which should inspire all their activities and solve all their problems. When Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you," he gave us not only a general rule, but also a particular one. His use of the words "this day" in the Lord's Prayer is a significant indication that he advised his followers to pray or meditate in the morning. There exist deep psychological reasons for this counsel. We can set the keynote of the entire day's activities by the attitude adopted during the first hour after waking from sleep. The activities and desires of the day have not then begun to disturb the mind. If we seek the kingdom first thing every morning and sacrifice a little time for its sake, our work will not suffer and our problems will not be neglected. But thereby we create a current of spiritual wisdom and strength which will flow beneath the whole of the day's activities and thoughts. Whatever we do will be done correctly. Whatever decision we must reach will be the right one, because it will be the fruit of calmer, deeper thought. Those who think it folly to attend to our spiritual attitude before we have attended to our worldly concerns put second things first and first things second. For them, as the Hindu scripture puts it, there is peace neither in this world nor the next. Whether we give 5 minutes or 5 hours to this practice of life-inspiring, it never fails to produce remarkable rewards in the long run. Is it not worth a quarter to half an hour a day to find mental poise and the consciousness of inner mastery? This matter of practicing meditation for 10 minutes to half an hour once or twice a day is merely one of habit, since a person gradually becomes accustomed to it as a part of his normal life. The second fortnight will be slightly easier, the third easier still, until in time you master the art. Even the busy man of affairs can fit it into his program so it becomes as natural as having a meal. Create the habit, stick to it, and without doubt it will begin to make its value felt in conscious progress. Spiritual unfoldment is not to be the haphazard thing it is so often is among us, but a steady and serious effort. An ordered and regular daily practice in meditation will naturally lead to advancement in the art. In other words, as you continue the method, less and less effort will be needed to produce the same result. Progress depends upon practice. Meditation will produce most results by being regular every day, rather than in fits and starts, because it is something that gradually soaks in by repeated daily efforts. The daily practice of mental quiet must be done as regularly as eating. Habit rules our lives. The man who has learned the secret of creating habits is able to control that which controls life. And the best habit a man can make is that of meditation. I would not only emphasize but overemphasize the astonishing value and urgent necessity of this habit. You will find in time that the daily period of mental quiet will become a looked-for joy instead of a disciplinary duty, as it might seem at first, and you will allow nothing to interfere with it. The next point to observe is that certain physiological and psychological conditions are advisable if success is to be attained with less difficulty. An easy body posture assists to put the mind at ease. A body in discomfort tends to make the mind uneasy. Physical stillness is the first gateway to mental stillness. A comfortable and convenient posture of the body rests the mind and enables one to begin the task of withdrawing within oneself. Go to the same quiet spot or room every day. Occupy the same chair or sit on the same bed each time. Sit upright and do not recline on your back. Thus, the body learns to respond automatically until it becomes non-resistant to the invading influence of the soul. Meditation is easier to perform and will bear a better fruit when the right conditions are conformed to. Choose a time when you will not be disturbed, when things around you are quiet, when the stomach and digestive organs are at rest, when the body feels comfortable, when the weather is not stormy. If it is also possible, fill your best room with flowers and incense. Put only ennobling and colorful pictures on its walls. Let those four walls prove a holy of holies to help you dwell a while within diviner things, and try to keep that room for your own personal use, so far as that can be done. A place wherein to meditate and pray, and to study the things of the Spirit. Before long it will begin to bear the invisible impress of the diviner life, so that as soon as you step into it, the cares and worries of worldly existence will fall from you. Anyhow, choose a place where you can remain in uninterrupted seclusion, where there is no noise, where animals and insects cannot irritate you, and where you feel harmonious and at peace. If you cannot get all these conditions, then get as much of them as you can. The first rule, then, is to mark off a small fixed fragment of your daily life, when you can devote yourself untroubled and undisturbed to the practice of the necessary exercises. You may begin with 10 minutes, but you will try to extend the period to half an hour as soon as you feel that it can be done without undue strain. Half an hour per day is a long time for the average Western man to spend in meditation, and it is not advisable to attempt a lengthier period except under the supervision of a competent teacher. I have suggested that the morning be chosen, but it is quite possible that circumstances exist which debar this time. In that case, the next best time is sunset, for then the mind can return more quickly to its interior quiet than it is able to do during the activity of the daytime. There is a mysterious quality in twilight which links it to the great spiritual currents that nature releases in regular rhythm. If the early evening is out of the question, then an alternative time would be just before retiring to rest at night. Failing these 3 times, you must then avail yourself to whatever half hour you can steal from the daily schedule. The fragment of time which you have marked off for this higher purpose is to be used in a manner which completely detaches it from the other activities of the day. Instead of busying yourself with something that draws and fastens your attention upon external matters, you will try to let go of such matters and of other persons, and put them aside for the time being, as though they had never existed, and to rule your thoughts and feelings with the ideal of inner calm as your goal. Hitherto, you may have given all your attention to the world without. The man who would understand himself must reverse this process and periodically divert the attention to explore the world within. He who would attempt to know his overself must learn to retire into his mind as a tortoise retires into its shell. The attention which has hitherto been dissipated on a succession of external objects must now be concentrated on a single internal focus. The path of concentration is simple to describe but difficult to practice. All you have to do is but to abstract your mind from all other thoughts, save this one line of reflection, which you set down as the subject of your concentration. But try it. Thought control is hard to attain. Its difficulty will astonish you. The brain will rise in mutiny. Like the sea, the human mind is ceaselessly active, but it can be done. At the center of our being dwells this wonderful self, but to reach it we must cut a channel through all the thought debris which rings it in and which forces us to pay unceasingly attention to the material world as the only reality. We like to turn inwards and let the mind rest in itself, not in the physical sense world, about as much as we like to hear the morning alarm clock. We moderns have begun to bridle nature, but we have not learned yet how to bridle ourselves. Thoughts hunt and harry us in endless packs. They torment us out of sleep at night, and fasten freely upon us throughout the day. If we could but learn the secret of their control and suppression, we could then enter upon a marvelous repose, a peace similar to that which Paul described as passing understanding. For the 5 senses cling to the material world like glue. They yearn for contacts with it and in the forms of things, people, books, amusements, travels, and activities of every kind. You can only kill the enemy in the moments when the senses are silent. When you think of going into mental rest, the senses immediately begin to object. They cry out against it. They say to you, "We want to stay in our own physical world which we know. We are afraid of this inner spiritual world of mystery and meditation. It is natural for us to cling to the physical world." And so they try their utmost to keep you attached to the material sphere. And that is the true reason why you think you dislike meditation, or at any rate shirk it. When the time for it comes, it is the senses that dislike it, not you. Therefore fight them and try to rule them. Mental effort comes first, then comes mental quiet. The mastery of the mind is the mastery of self. The soul that can conquer the ever-rising spray of thoughts can put on its captain's uniform and bid its whole nature stand to order. The power to hold onto a train of thought with great tenacity, to grasp it and with scorpionic claws, and not let go, is the power to concentrate that makes men. The masters of thought are the true masters of men. Are you weak in concentration? Then by a little practice every day you can become stronger. He who tries every day to do so, albeit for half an hour, shall master his wandering thoughts in time. A warning. When moral weaknesses and emotional imbalance are conjoined with mystical practices, the result is not elevation of the mind into spirituality, but degeneration of the mind into mediumship. The practice of meditation without the cultivation of ethical and intellectual safeguards can lead to self-deception, inflated egoism, hallucination, and even insanity. Therefore, it is not a quick and easy passage into occult experiences that the aspirant should seek, so much as a careful improvement of character, a resolute attack on faults, and a correct equilibrium of intuition, emotion, thought, and action.